Hello there, welcome to The Damned. Today I'm going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the 4 movies made so far. Since it's now been announced, a 5th movie is going to be made. God knows why, but it's going to be made. I'll get to that at the end of this thing. The thing we're actually talking about with Indiana Jones is a perfect original and the law of diminishing returns of the sequels. Because none of them are as good as the first one. And it's something that happens a lot with movies that are perfect first one, that you can't top the first one. I mean, there's stuff like Die Hard, the original RoboCop, you know, all those kind of movies, Dirty Harry. We're basically having a perfect original movie, a film that everyone's still watching and thinks, oh, this is great, this is amazing, you can't top this. Then you have to suffer through sequels and look at them and go, why did they make this? Apart from the money, it just doesn't look good. It just makes the original look better, but you kind of have to ignore the existence of the sequels as you watch the original. It's just like, well, what's the point? I mean, no, the one that's ever topped the original in the kind of pulp action adventure level is Star Wars, basically, with Empire Strikes Back. They only did it once. That's how hard it is to top something that's a great original with a even better sequel. I mean, Alien and Aliens, the sci-fi world, is debatable depending on what you like, whether it's the horror or the action. But that's more up for debate. But with Star Wars, it's like the second one, Empire Strikes Back, is just thought was the best one. But usually it goes down. I mean, 9 times out of 10 it goes down. I mean, you have other examples like Spider-Man or X-Men where it went up. But they started with promising originals with a much better sequel. They were like the best, the great sequel rather than the, you know, amazing original. They always had good originals, but the up to the greater sequels, and then they went down. But with Indiana Jones, it started at the peak and then went slowly down, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, among people who like these movies, there's 2 viewpoints of the sequels. Either Temple of Doom's the best, or Last Crusade's the best. I'm in a Temple of Doom point of view. I think that Temple of Doom's a great sequel. Not as good as the original, but it's a lot of fun. It's very flawed, but it's a lot of fun. I'm not so keen on Last Crusade. Nobody seems to like Crystal Skull. I don't think it's as bad as people say, but I don't think it's great either. I think there's some major problems with it. But I'll get to that later. But so I'll start really with looking at the original and why it's perfect. Because it's the perfect way to make a film. An adventure film is this film. Just the way they did it. The original Lost Ark, the original was beautifully made. I mean, they start by having a small action scene. It's a very exciting action scene, but it's actually small compared to the rest. What they do is they contain it and then they add more and more little details and more incidents. It's all about incidents with Indiana Jones. That's what people forget. It's not overblown action scenes. It's about one little incident, then another, then another, then another. That's what Spielberg's really good at, actually. It's like, he knows it's the little details you can actually, the audience can identify with, that makes an action sequence. It's not about blowing a lot of stuff up. If you actually look at his movies, there's not that many explosions, you know. They're really not explosions. He's not explosion heavy. He's actually a director who has little moments. This moment leads to this moment, this moment leads to this moment. So in the first sequence you have him into the tomb, has to avoid very small traps that are pretty vicious, but they're traps you could feel like make sense in the world, like these are defense mechanisms. It's all very simple setup, but it's the way it gives Harrison Ford a chance to react. So by the time you're through this one sequence, you know that basically Indiana Jones plays by luck a lot. He doesn't think things that far ahead, but he does do some planning. I mean, there are a lot of bits of planning he does. He has researched it, but he's open to improvising. So he knows things are going to go wrong. So you find that about the character. Plans ahead, but he can improvise. You also know he's quick on his feet. His reactions show the character's a sense of humour. So you know everything you need to know about the actual character in that first sequence to make you think, this is cool, I'm into this world, I want to see what happens next. I mean, it's perfect way to introduce a character. It's just like nice little action scene that, because of the character interaction, makes it seem bigger than it actually is. Because you've just got a few incidents and then you have the big ball rolling behind them. and then you see him getting screwed over by the French rival. So you see he's down in his luck a lot as well. So you get everything, the character in that first sequence that you need to know that's going to pay off and pay off throughout the movie. Some of that's got to do with Lawrence Kasdan's script, because he is a very good writer. He knows how to plan ahead and lay things early that'll pay off later. And he knows how to do character-based interactions. So even with Harrison Ford, where he's with people who'll be dead at the end of the sequence, he still interacts with them. So you get a lot about Harrison Ford's character of Indiana Jones. You know so much about him. It's also to do with Spielberg knowing the little details he needs. And also, George Lucas created the world in the first place. He created this whole idea of the adventurer, the idea of these old tombs that he has to basically go into and solve the puzzles. So I mean, it's like three really good professionals who come together. And the big thing with this series is, for good or bad, it's a really a combination of Spielberg and Lucas. For all the movies, what they do good and what they do bad, it affects every movie. So you can't really say, this person's great, this person's not so good. It's like they're both together and they're both to blame, or both at praise the same level almost, because they add and use their instincts a lot and it pays off in different ways in different films. But in this first film, they were both peaking basically. I mean, Lucas had just made Empire Strikes Back, you know, and this was his next big project. He hired Spielberg to be the director, which was a great move, and he set it up and let Spielberg do what Spielberg does. There's not much better you can ask for a producer than that. And then they also shot it as if it was almost a TV show, where it was very fast shooting. They planned it out, they didn't overproduce it, so everything had been done at a certain level. You're here for a certain amount of time, get everything you need here. You're here for a certain amount of time, get everything you need there. It's the best way to do it for this kind of movie, because you're improvising and you're creating moments quickly. Like the most famous moment was an improvisation where basically Harrison Ford was ill, had to get him off the set. So the big sequence planned, instead of having a sequence to have him shoot the guy doing the big sword thing, that was just improvisation. I mean, that's what's great about something that's with a very good setup, and then they can riff on it, and what happens on the set actually affects the movie in a good way. So basically the movie, after the introduction sequence where it's all about character and all about world building, you then go into the next sequence, which is seeing him at work, seeing him as a professor, seeing him dealing with people in the kind of professional world. So you get the fact that to the outside world is a bit more staid. When he's out in the field, he's much more a live character. In this world, he has to behave himself a lot more. He's got some friends, but he's always itching to get back out into the world. And it sets up that, plus it also sets up the plot beautifully. The one sequence, they set the exposition, that's all we need for the rest of the movie. Things add to that sequence, so you find little details, but they set up everything you need to know to get to the next plot point, so that each plot point pays off. They never did it as good as this, because one, they had a very clear objective, the Lost Ark, the Covenant. Also, there's the next point you have to get to, and then the next point went to the next point. It was always very clear with an objective they had to get to, and the Nazis were after it as well, so they had to avoid the Nazis. Brilliant setup. And again, the setup was so clear that they could actually have a lot of character moments within that, so that they've set the plot so well that there's room for character from now on. They don't have to, the plot's going to keep it going. So as long as they've got the clear beats throughout the story, they can have character moments for the rest of the story. That's what Star Wars did as well, the first few Star Wars movies. There's very clear moments, and because everything's so clear, the character moments that got you from A to B to C to D. Which one of the problems with the prequels was that the objectives weren't as clear, so you didn't have time for character moments, so the character moments were doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the plot at the same time, and you can feel that in the movies. Even though I like those movies better than some other people, it becomes a flaw because the plot's not clear enough, so that it's not doing all the work it needs to be doing. And it's the same thing even in Force Awakens. it wasn't clear enough either. It was clearer than the prequels, but still, wasn't as a well-oiled machine as something like the original Star Wars or the first two Indiana Jones movies. And so basically, that's so well set up, they're in good shape. So you get to Nepal where he meets Marion, and because everything's set up so well, they can spend 10 minutes letting you know about Marion and his relationship with her, and have an action scene at the same time. And again, this is a very small action scene. When you look at it now, is like, it's very basic setup. It's not actually that much happens if you actually look at it objectively. But we're in a sequence culture with Indiana Jones and with you of his point of view. It's very clear. Then you see her point of view. So you have two characters you actually care what happens to, and you have a lot of fire in the sequence. So again, Spielberg does these little moments that build character throughout the action that create more depth to characters, it creates more interaction. As you see them argue with each other, then having to work with each other, you get the relationship straight away. It's a relationship sequence, and they use the action to forward that relationship. And that's what's good about the film, is it's always got a few things going at the same time, but it's also knows what it's doing. And it's clear from A to B where it needs to get to, but it doesn't mean it has to be very straight about it. It can actually have weird moments where you get a lot of character beats that are a bit more eccentric, that make the characters maybe not look their best, but you see who they are. That you see that in the past Indiana Jones hasn't been the nicest of people, but you can forgive him because he's trying his best to make up for what he did wrong. And you see Marion's a bit damaged, but she's decent as well. So you find a lot of stuff, a good sense of humour. She doesn't put up with Indiana Jones at all. Again, it creates a great relationship that will push the film through to the end. And from then on in, you go to Egypt, I think it's Egypt you go to, and to try and find the Lost Ark, find this lost city. There's lots of little details, lots of fights as the Nazis are trying to chase them down. And again, you've got all these sequences where you look at it objectively, they're not big explosions, they're actually just little sequences where things build and build through character interaction. It's not actually, I mean, the chase sequence doesn't actually lead to anything beyond Marion gets caught, but the chase sequence through the streets is so much fun because you still feel there's an objective you're going towards. You're seeing more and more interactions throughout it. So even though for a plot level it isn't really needed, you could have had Marion kidnapped and caught another way, it creates a sense of momentum. It's, they're on their tail, so whenever they go into the stronghold of the villains from now on, you know they can get caught any minute. So again, it creates momentum, it sets up the world in Egypt so that you know the danger. That's what's really good with this film, it's always setting stuff up, but it's not telling you to set it up, it just does it the way you'd notice things in real life. It's like, those people are watching, those people look dangerous, and they set up stuff identifiable. And the whole movie goes that way, and that's why it's perfect. It just delivers everything, but in an eccentric way. It's like they were having fun making this film. You could sense they were having fun. They were very engaged with what they were doing. It was just enjoyable to them. So by the time you get to discovering the Ark and then try to get the Ark out of Egypt, you're actually now into the bit where there's actually bigger action, but because you're tied to the characters, it actually means a lot more. So you actually get more staples of pulp adventure stories, but because you're tied to the characters, it really has an impact. So it's wonderful. I mean, the sequences, I won't go on and on, but the sequences just add to the mood of the film, where it goes from being like a smaller action movie to a slightly bigger one, but it never becomes a huge action movie. It just always becomes a kind of, it's a character action movie. It's full of little details, and again you keep seeing Indiana Jones losing. He loses so often in this movie. He wins at the end, but he gets beaten up so much, he gets betrayed so much, he gets thrown in pits, he's facing down guys who are much bigger than him all the time, and it just pays off because you know he had to earn the victory. And that's something a lot of movies don't do. They try and do it, but you can see mechanisms in a lot of movies where you think, I know how you're doing this, know why you're doing this, and you haven't hidden it very well. So even though the actual film, you actually look at the plot from a distance, it's a very basic plot, because the details of how it was made just pay off. And that's why it's a perfect film. Films don't need great plots. They just don't. I mean, some of the great films have very basic plots. It doesn't matter. It's the story and how things interact in the world and how the mood comes across and what the director does, what the actors do with the story. That's what's important. But it's what you do with what you've got. And this film does it perfectly. And at the end, there's a massive effects sequence with people getting burnt alive and stuff like that, and God comes down and judges the Nazis in a very subtle way. But it's subtle how it's done, doesn't lay it out, but they have lots of effect sequences. It's terrific. Even at the end, they have a great thing with the Lost Arks hidden in this big warehouse. So they just keep paying off, and you can tell this movie they were having fun from minute one to the end. They were just having fun inventing this thing and just making this movie they wanted to see made. It's sort of like Ghostbusters that way, you feel that they were making a movie they wanted to see themselves. And you can never really repeat that, and it's difficult when they're doing like sequels to actually come back to that, because you can only be that pure once. So I mean, I don't have much more to say about this film beyond it's great. I mean, it's really good, and it's just about having a great setup, a really good script, and a good director, and good actors, and just knowing what they're doing. Okay, now we're going to Temple of Doom. This is the first of the sequels, and the sequels are a big drop from the original. I mean, if you look at a lot of reviews online, it's like, oh no, there's not that much of a drop from the first one to this two sequels. Then there's a big drop at the end. Actually, it kind of goes down, at least from my perspective, it's going down all the way. It's diminishing returns each movie, but it kind of goes like that at the end with the last two. But otherwise, people think it goes down, up, down. It's just a taste. I mean, I can't really judge people who like Last Crusade over Temple of Doom. It's just taste. You know, I'm as right as they are, and they're as right as I am, because it depends what you like. If you like what Last Crusade offers, it's obviously it's a better movie than Temple of Doom. I like what Temple of Doom offers. So, for me, it's a much superior film to Last Crusade. But it's just taste. You can't really judge other people for taste. It's just what you like and what you don't like. And they're both objectively weaker films. Neither of them have the same through line that Raiders of the Lost Ark had. They don't have that kind of beat for beat, introducing characters, doing subtle moments amongst the big stuff, and delivering the details and world building the way that the first one had to do, because it was the first one. This one, I mean, Temple of Doom has a lot more world building to do than Last Crusade. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons I like it more, because it expands the world beyond what you expected. Last Crusade doesn't, it just goes back to the same old locations. And this one, he's basically in India. I can't remember where he starts off. It's in China, I think. He starts off Hong Kong, and there's a whole sequence. It's set before Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you see him. He's actually a bit more. He's not quite as nice as he was in Raiders. He's still a bit more of a schemer at this point, and he's selling something to somebody for money, an old artifact for money. So he still hasn't really become Indiana Jones the way he was in the Raiders. But it's quite good because it gives you a different angle on him, so he doesn't have to do the same stuff. And it's the one film he's very different from Raiders, which makes it fun for me. Everything goes wrong. His sidekick is killed. They have a musical sequence, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, it doesn't need to be there, and it's much bigger than the Raiders. I mean, that's the big thing, is that I said about how good Raiders was at the small details. This film has a lot less self-control. They have a lot less taste in this film. They throw things at the screen all the time that might have been better thought out. But that's what's fun about the film. It does that all the time. It's just insane. Yeah, I mean, there's like, this is Spielberg going a bit mad in this film. It's a 1941 Spielberg. Is filters through this film a lot. I mean, apparently quite a few of them are going through divorces at the time, and some of the darkness came from that. But I just think they were also trying to do something different. I don't quite buy that it was just with the divorce. I think they were just trying to keep themselves interested and do something unusual with it. So they do some weird stuff all the time. I mean, the first sequence, they have a musical sequence, everything goes wrong, people get killed, left, right and centre. I think more people die in the first sequence of this movie than die in the whole of the last movie, because it feels like there's lots of people dying, getting killed off somewhere. The last movie, there wasn't much of a body count until the end when God came down and judged them all, but until then it was pretty spare for killing. This one, a lot of people die. So it's a terrific sequence. It's really well done. I'm not going into details of this happens, because what's the point? Because you have to see the film. But it's really well done. It's a lot of fun. It's tasteless as hell, but it's great fun. And it ends up Andy poisoned, and he has to get the cure. And they end up in a plane that is owned by the villain of that first sequence. So they end up the plane gets abandoned, and they're out of fuel, and they have to jump out of the plane and survive. And what turns out to be a great fun sequence. It's one of those sequences where really know whether in this film or not, because it is not very. It's not very realistic at all. They did die in real life, but who cares? Where they jump out using the this plastic dinghy, and they end up hitting the mountain, and the dinghy skis down the mountain till they hit some water. It's very Bondish, it's very over the top, and it's very unlike anything from the first film, which was a bit more measured. Again, it's one of those things like, if you can take this and the first sequence, you're in this movie and you're going to be happy. And if not, you should probably leave. I thought it was lovely, I just loved the hell out of it. It's just so much fun. Because again, they're trying something new, they're seeing what happens. And for a lot of people it's too far, but for other people, maybe I remember when I was a kid, this was one of those films discussed a lot in school because it was so out of, you know, it was one of those movies that went so far that was very much appreciated because it was just too far. Kids love that. I mean, that Gremlin stuff like that. Kids love that stuff because it's way too far-ish. But it's one of Spielberg's great gifts, is to go too far and have kids love him for it. So, I mean, kids love the whole of this film. It's like, it's one of those films that's quoted a lot. When in the 80s it was quoted a lot in the schools. Just monkey brains, stuff like that. It went on for months. And so, so basically the plot after that is, they're stuck in India, they have to try and get to civilization. They meet they find this village there where all the crops are dried up, and they say it's because the Shankara stones have been stolen and the children have been stolen from this new Maharaja, which is a nice setup. I mean, from then on in, that's the setup. Is like they go to his palace because it's on the way to where they're going. And he says he'll look into it, but he doesn't have any real plans to look into too much, because in this one, Indiana Jones is not the guy from Raiders. He's still more self-interested. But he says he'll look into it, but he thinks basically that it's just bad crops and they're starving, but there's nothing he can really do about it. I mean, he's not been mean, it's just that he can't really do much about it. But they travel to the palace anyway on the way, because he's actually a known archaeologist. They're allowed to stay the night and get the to meet the Maharaja and be seen as like good guests. So they meet the British who are still in India. They meet the Maharaja and all his assistants, who's just a kid basically. And then as the story progresses, you find there's a big underground temple. Sorry about that. There's that underground temple, which is the Temple of Doom, where they're sacrificing people for black magic. The children have been used as slaves to find the other stones, and it's going to be that everyone's going to be used to overtake the country. So Indiana Jones has to stop them. So that's basically the plot. I mean, it's a very simple plot. It doesn't progress at all. It's like you're there, there's something wrong, you deal with it. I mean, it doesn't have this great simplicity of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But again, it's new. It's not the same thing, and they're actually doing stuff that's different from the first one. Like, also the big thing, in the first one they had a kick-ass female lead who didn't take any crap from anyone, who was loud, who could be obnoxious, but who was smart, resourceful, and he could beat Indiana Jones. In this one, he's stuck with this entertainer who he had to kidnap to get the cure when he was poisoned, and now he's stuck with her. And she's annoying, she's vain, she is oblivious to a lot of things. But then again, she was kidnapped by this guy, so, you know, she's every right to be annoyed with him. It's like one of those things, it's like, obviously they did that just to amuse themselves and do something different, so it's not the same dynamic. They're trying something new. And for some people it's viewed as sexist, women, all women are like this. Well, it's not saying all women are like this. It showed in the last movie that a lot of women are very self-sufficient or tough. This one, she's a bit more ditzy. But when things go wrong, she still pitches in and does stuff. I mean, it takes a while for her to get beyond her own ego to figure out something's wrong. But as soon as you find that something's wrong, she pitches in. She's not great at this stuff. She was never trained to be good at this stuff. And it's fun to see someone who's unprepared deal with all of these creatures, because they draw up so many bugs on her and treat her so cruelly. It's almost like a cartoon. I mean, the movie is more of a cartoon, and she's more of a cartoon character, and they're cruel as hell to her. But it's funny because the actress is game, the director's having fun doing it. It's enjoyable. I mean, because it's a cartoon, it's not real life. So not every woman has to be, you know, quick and resourceful, as long as it's a fair representation between lots of parts. Same way every man should be a variation of different parts. There should be variations. That doesn't always happen in movies. A lot of movies are made by guys who don't like dealing with women, and because it's a problem, because it is unfair the way it's been set out, because there's not enough women parts, and they're pretty much the same types again and again. But this film was actually, I don't think this film is guilty of that. I think this film was just a cartoon, and it's pretty obvious that she's not meant to represent all women. She's just a damsel in distress. And it's fun for this movie, because it never happens in any other movies. Every other movie the women are really strong. This is a change up to try and see what they can do with it, because it's a broader film. If they made someone too resourceful in this film, the plot wouldn't have worked as well, because they've been too easy to get them out of the situation. So, it's fun. I mean, it's a fun sequence. Some people disagree. That's one of the things that makes some people not like this film. But I do, because I think the characterization's clear, and what they're doing is very clear. So, that's great. And there's a little kid as well. The kid's great. He's very resourceful. He's too small to be able to, it's a physical threat, but he can sneak in, do things. He can save Indiana Jones a lot by being smart. Once the Willie character, who's the female lead, once she starts to buck up her ideas and realise what she has to do, he's helped her as well. So I mean, it's a nice little unit. They've got their strengths and their weaknesses. It works well as entertainment because they're a good unit by the end of it. They come together and become a force to defeat these villains. And it works really well. I mean, when I first saw it, I had no clue why people were objecting to it. And even now, it's like, I can see why some people could get angry with it, but I think they're misplaced their anger. So, there's that. The characterization's fine, it's funny. It's broader, it's much broader than the first film. The first film was more genuinely funny. This one's broader. It could be annoying because they're going for big laughs and sometimes it doesn't work. But sometimes it does, and there's an energy to it that really works. And by the time you get to the third act, which is basically when Indiana Jones gets mind controlled by the villains and turns villainous for 5 minutes, it's a great little moment because it's so dark, and people forget that Spielberg and Lucas are both have some darkness in their films. You know, I mean, Lucas blew up a planet and she's done lots of dark stuff. Revenge of the Sith is pretty dark. Spielberg has done lots of dark stuff in his movies as well. I mean, they're both are capable of doing light stuff, but also doing some really dark stuff as well. So this is one of the darkest moments where the hero becomes a villain till he's saved the little kid, and then you have a 25-minute sequence where they free the children, start beating up the villains, then have to escape the villains, and have this chase through this roller coaster in a tunnel. And basically, it's what they used to mine, but they have getting chased by the villains through it. It's a great sequence. It's so much fun. It's very broad. Again, it's much broader than the first one. It's got much more comic-y elements. But again, it really just does what it needs to do. It makes a very different film. I mean, the whole film's much more stop-start. There's sequences, then they stop for a comic sequence, and they start again in the action sequence, then they stop for atmosphere. It's not the first one with the mix a lot. This one, it's just one or the other, really. It's much more blocked into sequences. But again, it makes it more interesting because it's different from what came before. They can't do the perfect Raiders of the Lost Ark again. That plot's been done, the newness is there. They can't do that, so they try something different to keep themselves active. I mean, this was, I think this is the first one of Harrison Ford's best Indiana Jones performances, because he's still interested, he's very engaged. He's really good at the darker stuff, he's really good at being selfish, but he's funny. It's a really great fun movie. I won't go any more about it because I think I've explained why I love it and why it's a fun movie. It's just enjoyable if you have a dark sense of humour. But it's not for everybody. That is really broad, but it's just so much fun.